So it means that we need to understand what are the challenges that our wildlife is facing. What are the challenges that our ecosystems, the habitats of our wildlife is currently facing. And also recognize and acknowledge that we are all part of the solutions to try to mitigate and to reduce the impact of the decline of wildlife and also the loss of habitats. And I think the numbers are very clear in that sense, and scientists have been very clear documenting this in the last years. One third of species in the United States have a great risk of extinction. One third. And if we look more specific of numbers, we also know that there are 12,000, more than 12,000 species with greatest need of conservation. These species, Hugo, are species that have been identified in the wildlife action plans that are determined by U.S. Fish Wildlife agencies in each state to determine which species need more efforts to be recovered. And we already know that there are more than 1,600 species that are already listed under the Endangered Species Act, and we don't want more species to be listed. That's the last resource, the last line that we want to cross. So we need to recognize those numbers, recognize the wildlife crisis that we are in, and try to find ways in which we could be active, but also understand that we all can do something from our backyards to try to reduce that kind of crisis. Yeah, the monarch is a very clear example of which you're talking about a moment ago. Yes, this is a decline from last year's count at 266 56 California overwintering sites, and demonstrates the importance of the recent decision of December of last year of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to propose to list the monarch as a threatened species, understanding that the loss of habitat, climate change, and the unnecessary use of pesticides are impacting severely the, the monarch butterfly, not only the western population, but also the eastern population. But if we talk in general terms, the species have been in decline for the last years. And the proposal of the U.S. Fish Wildlife Service to list the monarch as a threatened species will provide the resources for the restoration of their habitats, particularly in sites in California where we have been noticing that these species have been in decline, but also give more resources for states where there are the breeding sites and also for the overwintering sites to be restored. The monarch butterfly depends on the milkweed, which is the host plant in which the species depend on to put their larvae, to lay their eggs. So it is necessary for us to understand that we could be involved in the cultivation of native plants that are more appropriate for having more sustainable gardens in our houses, in our backyards, in our communities. So we could all be part of the restoration of the habitat of the monarch, and also to try to find sources and ways to collaborate and to help the species and to prevent their decline. So yes, this is another example of how wildlife in different species in wildlife have been impacted by different factors, and in particular the monarch for the reasons that I just mentioned. So currently there is a program that National Wildlife Federation is part of, which is the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And the Mayor's Monarch Pledge is an initiative to call local authorities, mayors in different parts of our country, and also in Canada and in Mexico, to collaborate and participate in the conservation of the monarch butterfly. And as we approach the spring, the initiatives start collecting the names. People can register, authorities can register in the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. You can visit NWF and find the site for Mayor's Monarch Pledge. The deadline for mayors to register their municipalities and their localities to participate in this program is March 31st. So this is a very good time to start thinking about that. So far, more than 1,000 municipalities have registered in the United States, and there are others that are in the process to do it too. So I think this is just one example of how local communities start to be involved and engaged in the conservation of this incredible species. The monarch butterfly is an insect that it weighs less than one gram, and so when you think about this miraculous travel that the mayor's monarch that the monarch does from north to south and vice versa from south to north, it's just an incredible. It's 3 miles of a journey of a multi-generational species. So the Mayor's Monarch Pledge is one initiative to participate in collaborative efforts at a local level to help the restoration of the habitats and also the cultivation of native plants. But as I said before in the beginning of the interview, we could all start, contributing to that by planting and cultivating plants that are appropriate for pollinators, like the Milky Way in this case for the monarch. So this is very very important when we think about um, wildlife, biodiversity, the protection of our public lands, the protection of our water, that the water that we depend. When we think about what types or what kind of legislation is necessary to support in regards of our environment, we have to think that in the United States in particular, we have to include all communities by communicating to journalists like yourself and communicating to all communities in both languages. It's very relevant. As you know, many newsrooms now in the United States incorporate reporters who are covering environmental issues. And in the United States, many reporters are bilingual. Major news networks, many major newspapers, major networks, radio networks, and TV and radio have bilingual journalists. So being able to reach more audiences in the United States in both languages is very important. And also the new generations who, as you know, younger than ourselves, are completely bilingual. They communicate in both languages. So the opportunity to reach out to new audiences, which they are actually not new audiences, but this is a new effort for many organizations who are trying to reach out to Hispanic bilingual Latinos in the United States, to let them know why it's important to advocate for your environment. What resources are in your community to participate in activities that are good and relevant for your community. In this case, in the scope or in the landscape of the environment, the field of the environment. But in many other fields, I think little by little, the United States and local authorities are realizing how important is the communications in both languages. And in the case of environmental issues, it's even more relevant, because the more you know and the more active you are, you have the capacity to get involved. You have the capacity to change the way of thinking of your community and advocate for the issues that are relevant for your community in both languages. So being bilingual is being a communicator that communicate issues in both languages, Spanish and English, is very relevant these days. But I think it's been, for the most part in recent years, more important and more relevant for everybody. So environmental issues in both English and Spanish have become more relevant because of the reasons that we just said.